Well, hockey season is officially over.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken,
part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what do you say, Seattle hockey fans? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where we bring you your favorite team every single day. And as I sit here on June 25th, NHL playoffs are wrapped up, ECHL playoffs are wrapped up, and yes, the AHL playoffs are wrapped up, which means that the Coachella Valley Firebirds fell to the Hershey Bears in Game 6. Unfinished business will have to be left unfinished as Dan Bylsma's tenure as head coach of the Coachella Valley Firebirds has come to an end. And on the one note, this is tough. This is tough news. It's you'll hear from Dan about how it feels. And we know that when we can turn a corner from this, it's potentially good news. But I think it's fair for us to react to what happened, especially last night, to assess everything that happened cumulatively, not just this season, but in the first two seasons for the Coachella Valley Firebirds, and then respond, or better yet, have Dan Bylsma, but particularly Ron Francis and the front office, respond to how everything has gone and how we want to move forward, especially knowing that the draft is coming up this weekend. So this is a big time. It's a time with a lot of feelings, and we're going to feel them. But before we move on, I want to let you know that today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Hey, the landscape in sports is changing right now. As again, hockey championships are wrapped up. NBA, of course, wrapped up. But we've still got Major League Baseball. We have the Olympics. And of course, the WNBA. And there'll be daily specials. That's right, daily specials for new customers on FanDuel. So make sure you check out FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Heartbreaking. Gutted. Numb. I told you on yesterday's episode, Disco Dan, head coach of the Coachella Valley Firebirds since their inception, was locked in, told his team to pack for two. And he believed it. I believed that he believed it. It was a simple message. It was a firm message. He was focused. Once again, the Hershey Bears, I think maybe including this one, 13-time Calder Cup champions. And they played like that. They played like a franchise that knows how to win. Listen, I grew up in New York, as a lot of you everydayers and OGers know. I'm a New York Metropolitans fan in the shadow of the New York Yankees. And you never get out of it. You never quite get out of it. No matter what you've done, you never quite get out of it. This is an early, perhaps budding rivalry. One that, quite honestly, I hope we can continue on. Whomever we keep on the team as staff and as players. But you have to respect what Hershey was able to do. They haven't won every championship, but they've won a lot. And there were times in this series where they were the more poised team. So congratulations to them. Also, congratulations to the Florida Panthers, who beat out the Edmonton Oilers and win a Stanley Cup. Paul Maurice winning a Stanley Cup, 2-1 the score there. Tight game, wild series. But I had Florida taking it, maybe not in such dramatic fashion. So as I said, hockey season on the men's side, and the women's side, all wrapped up. But let's hear from Dan Bylsma, because we know that this was a important campaign for him as he closes this chapter, a chapter that we've talked about was really important for him. And you'll hear at the end of this clip, it's about 2 minutes, when he says and has said, how important it was to reset his coaching career in Coachella Valley, I think you hear some of it, particularly at the end of the clip. And I just want to let you know as we go throughout the show and I give you a little bit more information, a little bit more assessment, analysis, and feedback, you'll hear notes and quotes. I want you to think about this. This is a closing of a chapter for Dan Bylsma. We know he's going to open a pretty big chapter coming up soon here, next week, really. So the question of the day, what do you want to see Dan Bylsma do as some of his first acts as head coach? I just want to put that out there. We're not quite there in the show yet. I'll give you some thoughts I have, but I wanted to present it now so you can digest what we're about to hear, how you're maybe feeling. So before I give my thoughts, I want you to hear from Dan Bylsma. And this is him on the dais after losing to the Hershey Bears in overtime.
It's super painful right now. It hurts a ton, but it hurts a ton because of the group we had, because the work they put in and how they came together as a team, and people and the individuals they are outstanding, and that's why it makes the outcome crushing. This is where I say I'm sorry, because I didn't get what we should have gotten. I think what those guys did and what our players put out on the ice should have gotten a championship, and so there's a lot of pride in the last 2 years, but I'm just I'm not getting the end prize is going to leave a mark. It doesn't need to win a championship for them to know how good of a team they are, how good of individuals they are, and how we came together as a team. You'd like it to win a championship, but it didn't. But that doesn't take away from what that team has become and what those individual players are, and just appreciate each and every one of them and every part of that group. That's what I said to him. Somebody said it after the game. It's just we've found the joy in playing the game, found the love of the game with this group, and that's what I'm thankful for that, and I want to take that with me.
This meant a lot to Dan, and I think there's a lot of different ways that you can take that. I think it meant a lot because he knows it's the end, right? It's the end of his time with the Coachella Valley Firebirds, at least as far as we know it with this group. I think it meant a lot because it just did. He wanted this win for his team, for the fans, for the franchise, for himself. He wanted this. There's validation in winning a championship. There is. I mean, that's period, point blank. He did not get that validation. And I think there's two things that are true. You can take away the good while also reflecting on what needs to improve so that you don't feel this way again. And we're going to do a little bit of that as much as we can on today's episode of Locked On Kraken. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken is brought to you once again by our friends at FanDuel. I know you love sports at least as much as I do, if not more, and we never want them to stop. And that is certainly the case. I did not want to have to record an episode saying that the AHL season was over. I just knew we were going to Game 7. But, the ball stops bouncing. The puck is going to stop sliding across the ice. And so as the playoffs are now over in hockey, we get fewer games, of course, in our sport, but we're not without sports. I mentioned we have the WNBA, the Olympics. That's kind of a big deal. And of course, Major League Baseball still going strong. FanDuel is going to keep sports going in any way that you want. And all you have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime you're in the mood. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to fanduel.com/lockedon and start making the most of your summer. FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball and, of course, us here at the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks again for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination. And make sure you're tapped into Locked On NHL this week. On the one hand, we, of course, will be getting ready for the draft. On the other hand, I should have some goodies ready for you for PWHL coverage. So make sure you're checking all of that out. All right. I gave you my reaction a little bit. I gave you Dan Bylsma reaction, which I think is more important. I want to continue a little bit more reacting and also moving to assessing this season. Putting it into context is really what I'm talking about here. And that can be hard to do after a loss, but it's important work. The Hershey Bears showed their championship mettle, winning another close game with a 5-4 overtime victory over the Firebirds in Game 6 of the Calder Cup Finals on Monday. This is coming from the Desert Sun, Shad Powers. Shout out to the coverage that we get from local media for the Firebirds. The Firebirds could only exit the rink with a similar blank stare to 2023. I think, and I'll go over some of this in the next segment because I think it goes to kind of what we're going to do in the future. But I mean, we have to say that it was a fantastic performance by some individuals, especially in this game. Dubé had a hat trick for the Hershey Bears. Ryan Winterton with a brace, both crashing the net. Huge goal by Cale Fleury. And again, I want to assess and talk about some other things that, you know, are maybe not on the flattering side, but that we have to talk about. But I want to go back to this article and just give you some more quotes, you know, from the guys, because I think at this moment, that's what matters is, you know, how they're reacting. And so again, you heard from Bylsma, he apologized for not getting it done. This is what Max McCormick, captain, had to say. We felt like we were outplaying them and creating more opportunities in several parts of the game this series. But they're an opportunistic team. And when they got those chances, they seem to go in, and that's just the way it goes. Isn't this what we've been talking about for the past few days? I really don't know how else to say that this Hershey Bears team, they are stealth. They are lean. They do exactly what Max McCormick says here, what I've been saying for the past several days. And if you watch the live streams, what I've been saying there. And I say that matter-of-factly. I mean, yeah, I'm a little bit miffed because the Firebirds didn't move on. And, you know, a la my New York Mets, New York Yankees comparison, I don't like the Yankees. I even probably would say I hate them. I respect them because I love baseball. And they've set a standard. The Hershey Bears are kind of like that. I don't really hate them. Again, I've had years to build a very negative impression of the Yankees, particularly because of how Yankees fans treat Mets fans. But that's a whole nother story, and this is not a therapy session. They're a good team. I sit here less enthusiastic about good hockey because I'm hurt for the team that I cover most closely. I'm hurt for the players that worked really hard. Do I think that the Firebirds were robbed? Do I think that they deserve to win? If I'm being honest, the answer is no. And that's not because they didn't work hard, but it's because the Hershey Bears worked hard as well. Maybe in different ways, but this wasn't a stolen game. This wasn't a fixed series. This is a good team playing good, opportunistic hockey. And they made the Firebirds work. They exhausted them. And that's a skill. That's a skill. You got to respect it. Tough one to lose for sure. These last 2 years, really, it's been 3 years for a lot of us, if you include Charlotte, which McCormick was a part of. You just couldn't have asked for a better staff to play for and team to be part of, said Max McCormick. I wanted to get it done for Bylsma. We wanted to get it done for each other and send him off the right way. It's a tough pill to swallow. I'm hurting for these guys because they put it out there. They really put it all out there on the line. But it wasn't meant to be. And that's life. That's life. I'm just going to get to some stats here because, hockey is a results driven sport. Once again, the Coachella Valley Firebirds were 0 on the power play, only had 1 power play opportunity. They gave up 2 to Hershey, including a power play goal. The shots on goal, Hershey outshot the Firebirds 10-7 in the first, 6-5 in the second. We haven't seen that all series, almost all series. So Firebirds on the back foot in the shots category, but got on the board within the first minute and a half by that Ryan Winterton goal, his 6th of the playoffs. Just tough. Gave up 2 goals, including the power play goal in the first frame. Got 2 though in the second, but then Dubé. I mean, these goals by Dubé, you had the bumper shot on the power play, the second one and the third one, bad giveaways in the defensive zone. As a matter of fact, that's how the Hershey Bears win this game. I'd need to look at different angles of the replay. It's not outside of the realm of possibility that these were also maybe some softer goals. But the fact of the matter is that the Firebirds lacked discipline, or maybe just, again, they were worn down by Hershey and they did not recover well on defense. You had 2 major giveaways in the defensive zone that lead to the 4th and 5th goals for Hershey. And that's after puck watching on the second goal for Dubé. You're not going to win games against a team like Hershey playing like that. I got to say it. I said the same thing when the Kraken were eliminated. You got to talk about it. We got to talk about it. That's just a fact. Not great. Again, though, good Hershey team. Good Hershey team. I know this is like a solemn episode because this is tough. I don't want to be critical of a team while I know they're hurting. But there were some things that were within their control that they didn't control. And this is why you have to assess, right? And retool. Defense was so good, so much better for the Firebirds. And I don't know if it was what the Firebirds were doing. I don't know if it was what the Hershey Bears were doing. Well, I can almost guarantee at least some of it was because of what Hershey was doing. But the Firebirds never recovered. They never recovered from being taken outside of what they do well, especially defensively, which I do think for this particular Firebirds roster, what they were able to do on defense, it fueled their offense in a lot of ways. And there was a lack of syncopation between the game. And it was choppy at times. And it was in those lapses, I'm kind of chopping my fingers here, but when you pick up a pen and then you put it back down, there's just ever so slightly a line, right? If you're doing a continual motion and then you pick it up and there's just that little space, that's the space that Hershey occupies in. They thrive in those moments. It's honestly beautiful to watch. Putting aside the fact that this is a Kraken podcast and the Firebirds are a Kraken affiliate, and that the former now head coach of the Firebirds will be the future coach of the Seattle Kraken. That was beautiful to watch by Hershey. I don't want to say it was rope-a-dope because, I don't know how intentional it was, but they just see the ice. They feel it's almost like they feel the game so well because you have to have lightning speed reactions to see the mistakes so clearly and execute so expertly. Like, do you understand how huge that is? That's huge. And it's heartbreaking to be on the other side of that. Not once, but twice. Heartbreaking. But if you're asking me to say if the Firebirds deserved to win when you go up against something like that, that's hard for me to say. Objectively. The storylines are great. I would have loved to talk about another game. And of course, bragging rights to the title. But we have to now ask ourselves, what are the things that are going to send the Firebirds over that hump? How do they learn how to beat a team like Hershey? I mean, that's the question everyone in the AHL is asking. And there are reasons why there can be potential limitations to being able to answer that question, including that you got a roster that's ever changing. And for the Firebirds, there's some pretty big changes coming, and not just at the head coach level. We're going to talk about that coming up on today's episode of Locked On Kraken. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken also brought to you by our friends at eBay Motors. Oh man, passion, drive, and patience. That's what you need to win a championship. Oof, this is a tough one to read. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED lights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you always find exactly what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only. Available to U.S. customers. Whew. Did we lack passion? No. Did we lack drive and patience at times? Maybe. Discipline, I think. Defensive discipline for sure. Those are fixable things. Sometimes they're things you have to fix through learning. And I think the Firebirds did a much better job earlier in the playoffs. So what happened? I think you can point to Podorowski. For starters, losing him in game one, that's brutal. That's brutal. And that's why veteran leadership, sometimes it's hard to quantify exactly how important veteran leadership is at times. But maybe that was a little bit of the missing ingredient. Podorowski missing McCormick and Hayden having difficulty. Again, Hershey, credit to them for shutting them down. First period injury in game one of the Calder Cup final. That's when we lost Potsy. He notched 2 goals and 8 assists and doubled. So 16 quality scoring chances. He generated 16 quality scoring chances for his teammates. That's huge. And that's that connectivity that was missing a lot of the time. I said, good defense leads to good offense. I think it goes the other way as well. And we talked about at times the Firebirds having trouble breaking through the zone and the like. So I don't want to get too down on that stuff. But so again, we know Dan Bylsma, he's going to Seattle. It's all but a foregone conclusion that Shane Wright's going to Seattle. But who goes and who stays? That's the title if you're looking at the thumbnail on YouTube. Who goes and who stays? Shane Wright, I think, has probably earned his spot, but we'll see at training camp. Ryan Winterton, Ryker Evans, Jacob Melanson. And then what about the coaching staff? Do we bring Stu and Jessica Campbell? And it's tough because you want to think about the future of the NHL team. And Seattle, we need a lot of things. But when you have an AHL team that in its first 2 years has gotten to the finals twice, gotten to a game 6 twice, a game 7 in season 1, went to overtime in the game clinching Calder Cup finals game, how much do you want to upend that? I mean, from a player perspective, it's inevitable. It's the AHL. It's a development league. I mean, and if we're being honest, it's the AHL. It's a development league for coaches. Case in point, Dan Bylsma. So do you get selfish? Do you keep some players? Likely not. But do you keep some of the staff with Coachella? See if they can catch lightning in a bottle? Maybe put a little bit of their stank, if you will, a little bit of their signature on it and see if that path forward can lead the Firebirds to another Calder Cup finals? Or do you see if they can all together replicate even just a quarter, an ounce of that success in Seattle? I don't know what the answer is. I said we're going to have JD back on because I want to hear his thoughts. Let him air it out for a little bit. But I really don't know the answer. I go back and forth. One day I'm here, one day I'm there. And another thing is back to the drawing board for Bickle and Campbell. Bickle working with the defense, from what I understand. We've talked about it on the show. And there were defensive breakdowns in the last handful of games. Got to be honest. Power play ran out of steam. What adjustments were made? Were they enough? You know, a lot of times the coaches are going to get slack, and a lot of times it's warranted. And then sometimes there are times where a coach has given all the tools, done all the talking, made all of the corrections, and players aren't responding. I don't know where we're at with that, but it's concerning as someone who watched the Seattle Kraken play the last season, 23-24, where I could never really put my finger on how much was coaching, how much was the players, and if there truly was an impasse because something wasn't clicking. I don't think we are not at such an exaggerated level with the Firebirds. That's not what I'm saying. We're not even close. But we didn't think we were there with the Kraken last year either. But remember, I said it a lot. We arrived a little early to the station last season as the Kraken. What does just right look like for us? Apparently, it's a new head coach. But what, again, question of the day, what do you want to see Dan Bylsma do as one of his first acts as head coach of the Seattle Kraken? And you know, I'm a poli-sci major for those who aren't everydayers and OGers. But if you are, you probably heard me talk about this before. As a political science major, as someone who studied politics in school and leadership, a lot of times you'll hear the first 100 days. Leaders are measured by their first 100 days. So here we go, June 25, 2024. I can imagine it's probably an off day, but it's day 1. So let's count down the 100 days. What will we see in the first 100 days in the Disco Dan era? I can't answer that. Only one guy can answer that. And we'll talk about that. Coming up, be kind to yourselves. Be kind to one another. Get ready for the draft. I'm saying Booyam at number 8. But we'll have some time this week to get you ready for that. That's the pivot we have to make. The show must go on. Hockey is over for this season. Congratulations to the Everblades, to the Hershey Bears, and to the Florida Panthers, as well as, of course, the PWHL Minnesota team. Congrats to you on being champions. Only one team sits at the top, and all of you have done it in your respective leagues and categories. Congrats to you. But always, we say hold fast, stay true. Let's go Kraken. Get fired up. And go Mavs go. Erica L. Ayala, your host of Locked On Kraken. A somber episode, but a necessary one. But remember, today starts day 1. We're counting down the 100 days. We'll do that until we get there. But for now, I'll catch you on the next episode. Peace.